Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. We have AI attacking and killing a drone operator. We have a deal on the debt limit, which is great. And Tesla has become the best selling cars in the world on top of more food shortages. Let's go ahead and get started. The main thing that's been in the news essentially over the last few weeks and months is the situation with the debt deal. They finally made a debt deal, and we're obviously having a pretty bad problem with inflation, right? And part of the reason why that is because they have created, injected into the economy over 90% of the dollars in existence have just been printed in the last 2.5 years since the pandemic, right? So obviously, if you think about a product, if there's a lot more of a product than the demand for it, the supply of a product goes up, which means there's a lot more products. Well, the value goes down. It's just simple, I forgot that word in English, supply and demand. Same on the opposite route. If there's a lot less supply, a product becomes more valuable. And that's kind of the way that you can think about it about the money supply. It's a little bit more complicated than that, obviously, right? But that's just in layman's terms. What's happened is since they printed the most amount of money that we ever have in history, obviously that has to go somewhere, and that's why we're seeing a lot of this inflation. Now, the reason why I explain that is because in the deal for the debt limit, the reason why the debt limit is there is to try to protect us, right? To have the government come to an agreement about not spending money stupidly, which we've seen in multiple countries in history, like Germany after World War. Zimbabwe is a famous one. I have $100 trillion bill from Zimbabwe. And even most recent cases, Venezuela and Argentina, where they're running at about 100% a year. So one of the things that they agreed with in the deal is to just remove the debt limit for the next 2 years. So we're running $2 trillion deficits. The interest expense on the debt has even eclipsed our defense spending. So we're literally walking into a really big problem where the biggest amount of money that we spend on our budget is going to be interest on the debt. So this is just a house of cards waiting to come down. And the worst thing that they could have done is said, well, we're just going to remove the debt limit for the next 2 years so we could just spend all the money that we want and have no repercussions at all. So get ready for inflation to come back with a vengeance, because this is not going to end well. Now, the other piece of news that was really important was that a BLS report revealed that there was 339,000 new non-farm payroll jobs. That basically means that the economy, quote unquote, is doing well. That indicates the Fed, which is the central bank in the United States, that the economy is resilient or, strong-ish, and they're more likely to raise rates. That's not good for you and I, because since the economy and the governments around the world now are over financialized, everything basically relies on debt. The more that they increase the interest rates, the harder it is for you and I going to be to live, right? So this isn't a good news, but on that news, the US dollar skyrocketed. That caused a lot of commodities to go down, things like oil and gold and silver. But eventually that's going to flip on its head, because you can't print money forever without consequences. The markets in the US were mostly positive, or all of them were positive, actually, including Canada. European markets were mixed, with Istanbul exploding over 11%. Latin America mostly higher. My dear, beautiful Colombia was the biggest winner there. In the Middle East and Africa, the Nigerian markets were the most positive. And then a far, far east, we have mostly mixed markets, with the Nikkei out of Japan being the most positive there. Bitcoin and crypto, not a whole lot of news, not a lot of movement either in Bitcoin. It went up 1.67% to just a touch over 27,000. Generally in markets, when we see this kind of, I believe the word in English is conflagration, think of it as a consolidation where the market is just kind of the market always has energy, right? I've been in this industry now for going on, I think it's 23 years. I keep, I started in high school, but whenever the market always has energy, right? And that's why when it goes down, it goes a lot faster than it goes up because of the fear. And, when things are going up, things like Bitcoin and other, Dogecoin, you see these booms and busts. So when we have a situation where the market kind of goes sideways for a while, that energy is pent up and it's kind of working in there. So let's see if we see a big move in Bitcoin due to the fact that that's generally how the markets mostly behave. In commodities, the combination of factors in Florida, the orange harvest now is going to be 56% smaller this year than last year. It's going to be the worst harvest since 1937. Just to give you an overall idea of the situation, 20 years ago, they produced 200 million boxes, and this year they're expected to produce just 18 million boxes. I believe the city around just outside of Orlando called Winter Park, just outside of Disney and Universal Studios, all of that used to be just thousands of hectares of orange fields, just thousands. And they were literally knocked down because a plague went after the trees and they just couldn't grow them anymore. And now they're just a bunch of, McMansions, just huge, beautiful subdivisions. But it's just kind of, it's sign of the times. You can see how this is kind of happening everywhere. Florida, the hurricane took out, those two hurricanes took out quite a bit. Obviously, we have the plagues I just mentioned to you in addition to the weather. The situation with beef is also starting to tighten and becoming a problem as well. We have the lowest amount of cow herds, or the cow herd, the amount of cows essentially is the lowest number since 1962. So enjoy that beef while you still can. And Georgia peaches, in addition to that, are going to have a 90% drop in their peach production because of an unseasonably cold snap that they've had and a prolonged cold snap. So much for the global warming. And this is the worst year since 1955 for the Georgia peaches. Russia signed new 10-year... let me go back. Arizona, right, is not going to allow any new housing construction in Phoenix that depends on groundwater because they don't have any water anymore. They literally are running out of it. So you can see different places around different places around the world what's going on, and I think these kind of extreme situations with the weather are going to get worse rather than get better. Maybe one of these days we'll talk about why that's happening, because it's not man-made, in my opinion. Anyway, Russia signed 10 new cooperation agreements with Iran for the oil sector alone in May. Going back to that comment about the weather, Mount Etna just exploded. Mount Etna is a volcano in the south of Italy, where I used to live in Sicily. And the amount of carbon that one volcano, blew out was more than the entire carbon footprint of what humans have done ever in history. You can't tax volcanoes, though. That's the problem. So China also made an agreement with Iran as well. You can see the situation with the dollar and how kind of the power is shifting east, so to speak. Crude went down on the dollar news. Remember, I told you guys about the situation with the new jobs, which means that the Fed is most likely going to increase rates again, which increases the demand for the dollar, which increases the strength of the dollar, which drops all of the commodities and everything that are listed in dollars. So the U.S. crude went down over 1%. Brent went down over 1% as well. The demand for lithium, which is a key component in the electrical and EV batteries, electric vehicle batteries, is expected to explode over 600% in less than a decade. Sorry, that was tough to get out. Tongue twister. I'm recording this really late. But there's a U.S.-based top world producer called Albemarle. They operate mines out of Australia, Chile, and the U.S. is going to open up the another domestic lithium mine in North Carolina and Kings Mountain by 2027. And gold and silver obviously fell sharply. They went down quite a bit due to the dollar being increased so much. Gold went up 0.06% for the week, 1948.50 cents, and silver went up over 1% to 23.69. Financial and banking news, the inflation in UK shops reached its highest level since records began in 2005. Supermarket and retail chain inflation went up 9% year over year, while food price inflation came down to 15.7%. Or excuse me, it came from that amount to 15.4. The UK actually has the highest inflation of all of the G7 nations, in addition to Italy. And the Eurozone inflation overall fell quite a bit, 6.1%. And some of the readings that are coming from Germany, France, and Spain, in case you guys are watching there, looks like inflation is going down there as well. In political news, or excuse me, UK, yep, I just mentioned that. So political news, Erdogan in Turkey is going to rule for his third decade after winning the presidential election there. I'm sure that was legitimate. Spain is getting walloped. The socialists that have been running Spain so well the last few years that Spanish are going to wash toilets in Germany have gotten an absolutely shellacking from the conservatives there. Only 3 of the 12 regions holding the elections actually retain the socialists. Florida, there's a lawsuit against the EPA with fluoride in the water. There's actually a law that says that you can sue the EPA if if there's facts and things that say that it's toxic for humans. Well, it turns out fluoride supposedly is supposed to help your teeth. That's why they put it in there. But a rapidly emerging science on development neurotoxicity, listen to this, especially a loss in IQ from early life exposure to fluoride, is a game changer. So there might be a situation where legally they might not be able to put fluoride in the water anymore because of the fact that it's not that healthy. Just for the record, the Nazis used fluoride in the water as well. That's where it came from, just in case you were wondering where it was started. And since they did such a great job with humanity, I'm sure the governments are doing it as well. Economic news, the India's manufacturing PMI surged to its highest level in October in 2020. 22nd straight month that the manufacturing in India remain in expansionary territory. And essentially what's happening there, in addition to India just booming as a whole, their economy grew 6.1% year over year, which is more than what economists expected. But there's a lot of people that are moving away from China because of all the problems that are starting there and moving to India. So that's a big boost for them. Corporate news, NVIDIA joined the $1 trillion market cap club after they rose another 3% on Thursday with their news about the AI chips. Dollar General fell over 19% after they missed on their earnings. They're saying that the macroeconomic environment is more challenging than expected. And if people that were trying to save money, that were going to dollar stores, aren't going to dollar stores anymore to buy stuff, that means that consumers are starting to pull back. And remember that the biggest part of the economy in the US and most other industrialized nations is consumer spending. In the United States, for example, it's close to 70%. That means that the economy is not in a good position, even though the job numbers came out and they were well. Toyota's global sales rose 5% year over year. Strong numbers in Japan and China. And Tesla Model Y has become the best-selling vehicle in the world, Q1, beating out the Toyota Corolla and variations of that by just over 10,000 units. The shares of Tesla going up again have made Elon Musk the richest man in the world again. And Tesla shares went up because he went to Tesla China. He went to China to meet with the plant in Shanghai, in addition to meeting with some of the Chinese officials there. Trade news. The U.S. is escalating its trade spat with Mexico over GMO corn. Mexico is actually one of the only places that doesn't allow it at all. And obviously, they need a little bit of capitalism. So they're starting a trade fight with Mexico to force them to use the GMO corn. And if you guys don't know, GMO corn, you can't use the seeds to replant the corn. So Monsanto, which is now, I believe, owned by Bayer, which was also involved with the Nazis, by the way, they own the seed. So you have to keep buying the seed from the company in order to plant the corn. You can't just get it won't grow. Like, they literally patented nature. I just got to say it. It's not bueno. Technology, Apple is widely expecting to announce a new headset, which is going to blend video in the outside world with a virtual one, kind of like but somewhat similar to the Oculus from Facebook. So now looks like we're going to have another little mega fight between Facebook and Apple in regards to whose headset is the best. And as I mentioned to you guys, the U.S. Air Force tested an AI-enabled drone that was tasked to take out specific targets, and a human operator had the power to override the drone. So the drone decided that the human operator was an obstacle to its mission and attacked and killed the AI operator, or excuse me, the human operator. Afterwards, the military or the senior official said, "Oh no, that didn't really happen. I spoke out of turn." But that's what we're gonna walk into when it comes to AI. Investment news: the Tata Group in India, which is a mega corporation out there, they're looking to produce a lithium-ion cell factory with an investment of $1.58 billion. It's India's efforts to make their own supply chain when it comes to electric vehicles. And international events: Ukraine drones struck wealthy districts in Moscow on Tuesday. Russia said that it was one of the most dangerous attacks since World War II. Like invading another country like Ukraine, that's just, that's just not bad at all. And Kiev was also hit from the air for the third time in 24 hours. And interesting facts: the population in Japan declined for the 7th consecutive year. If you didn't know, China has a population bomb also. I believe, if I remember correctly, the article that I read, by 2100, they're going to have at least half of their population in China. The newborns slid 5%, while the number of deaths shot up 9% to a record 1.57 million. And I mentioned to you guys before that Elon Musk owns 13% of Tesla, so he's now the richest man in the world again. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, the preppers were right.